The Echo Chamber. Captain Valeria Kadri watched the endless void through the observation deck of the ISS Prometheus. After 14 months patrolling the outer reaches of the Rigel sector, the monotony of deep space had settled into her bones. The Interstellar Survey ship represented humanity's farthest permanent presence from Earth, a testament to how far they'd come in the century since the first Mars colony. "Captain," the ship's AI intoned softly, "Dr. Osai requests your presence in the science lab, priority level alpha." Kadri frowned. Marcus rarely used priority codes. "On my way." The science lab hummed with activity as she entered. The typically methodical space had transformed into a flurry of movement, with the 12-person science team gathered around the main holographic display. "This better be important, Marcus," Kadri said, nodding to her chief science officer. Dr. Marcus Osa, brilliant, meticulous, and not given to exaggeration, looked up from his console with undisguised excitement. "It's unprecedented, Captain." His fingers danced across the controls, and the hologram shifted to display what appeared to be an enormous structure floating against the blackness of space. "We detected it approximately 90 minutes ago," he continued. "Initially, I thought it might be an unusual asteroid formation, but look at these energy signatures." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a massive vessel unlike anything Kadri had ever seen. It featured sweeping, organic curves interlaced with impossibly precise geometric patterns. The structure seemed to shimmer slightly, as though not entirely present in normal space. "That's a ship," Kadri whispered. "Not just any ship," Marcus replied. "Based on preliminary scans, it's been out here for at least 40,000 years." Kadri felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had spent centuries searching for signs of intelligent extraterrestrial life. They'd found bacterial remnants on Europa and Mars, but nothing that suggested advanced civilizations. Now, barely 2 light-years beyond their farthest outpost, they'd stumbled upon something that made the Prometheus look like a child's toy. "Have you attempted communication?" she asked, her training taking over. Lieutenant Hiroko Nakamura, the team's xenolinguist, stepped forward. "We've tried standard first contact protocols, mathematical sequences, binary code, radio frequencies across the spectrum. No response." "It appears dormant," Marcus added, "but our sensors detect an energy source within. Whatever it is, it's still operational after 40 millennia." Kadri studied the hologram, noting the vessel's enormous scale. "Set course to intercept. Alert the crew. I want a full briefing in 30 minutes." Communications specialist Dmitry Novik observed the alien vessel growing larger in the viewscreen as the Prometheus approached. Born in the underground cities of Ukraine following the climate wars, he had spent his childhood dreaming of stars he rarely saw. Now, at 33, he'd traveled farther from Earth than all but a handful of humans. "Transmitting greeting sequence Delta," he reported, his fingers sliding across his console with practiced efficiency. "All frequencies, all known protocols." The bridge fell silent except for the soft electronic hum of equipment. Captain Kadri stood behind him, while Security Chief Joaquin Rivera maintained a vigilant stance, his hand never far from his sidearm. "Still no response," Dmitry confirmed after several minutes. Dr. Osa studied his tablet. "I'm detecting minuscule energy fluctuations. It's almost as if." "As if what?" Kadri pressed. "As if it's listening." "Continue transmission," Kadri ordered. "Lieutenant Novik, try the sequence again." Dmitry nodded, but frustration overwhelmed his professional demeanor. "Che-om-ut-en yev Cyrillic letter 456, de peov Cyrillic letter 456, de as Cyrillic letter 454 sha," he muttered in Ukrainian. "Why won't you answer?" The effect was immediate and dramatic. The alien vessel pulsed with sudden life, ripples of amber energy cascading across its hull. The Prometheus proximity alarms blared as energy readings spiked off the charts. "What did you do?" Rivera demanded, drawing his weapon reflexively. Dmitry stared in shock. I just spoke to it in Ukrainian." Dr. Osa checked his readings, eyes wide. The mathematical protocols didn't work, but a human voice in Ukrainian triggered a response. Captain Kadri leaned forward. Lieutenant Novak, say something else. Dmitri swallowed hard and spoke again in Ukrainian, this time a formal greeting. The vessel's response intensified, patterns of light shifting and coalescing across its surface. "It's generating a docking field," announced Navigation Officer Priya Kapoor, her voice strained. "It's pulling us in. Should I resist, Captain?" Kadri hesitated only briefly. "No, let it guide us in, but be prepared for emergency separation." As the Prometheus was drawn toward the ancient vessel, the crew watched in awe as a seam appeared in the seemingly solid hull, widening into an entrance large enough to accommodate their ship. "It's inviting us inside," Dr. Osei whispered. The boarding team assembled in the airlock, each member checking their environment suits. Captain Kadri had selected a small group: herself, Dr. Osei, Security Chief Rivera, Engineer Jin Wei, and Communications Specialist Novak. "Remember," Kadri addressed them, "we're making first contact with a civilization that may have been spacefaring when our ancestors were still figuring out agriculture. Standard protocols apply. No hostile actions. Document everything." The team stepped through the Prometheus's airlock into a transparent tunnel that had formed between the two vessels. It was neither solid nor liquid, but something in between. A miracle of engineering that shouldn't have been possible according to human understanding of physics. "Atmospheric readings are stabilizing," Marcus reported, checking his scanner. "Oxygen, nitrogen, trace elements. It's creating a breathable atmosphere." "Keep your helmets on until I give the word," Kadri ordered. They progressed through the tunnel into the ancient ship. The interior defied expectations. Instead of a confined space, they entered what appeared to be a vast chamber with walls that seemed to shift and move, as if the very structure of the vessel was fluid rather than solid. "This is incredible," Engineer Wei breathed, her engineer's mind struggling to comprehend the technology surrounding them. "The ship appears to be reconfiguring itself in response to our presence." Dmitri felt an odd sensation, a gentle pressure at the edges of his consciousness, neither invasive nor threatening, but unmistakably present. "Does anyone else feel that?" he asked hesitantly. Before anyone could respond, the chamber illuminated with countless points of light, coalescing into a three-dimensional star map that surrounded them completely. At the center of the display, a pulsing light marked their current position. "It's showing us the galaxy," Marcus gasped. "But not as it is now. Based on stellar positioning, this map shows the galaxy as it existed approximately 40,000 years ago." Suddenly, the points of light began to move, stars shifting position as the map accelerated through time until it matched current astronomical charts. A series of symbols appeared, unlike any language the team had encountered. "It's communicating," Dmitri said, "but I don't understand." As if in response to his words, the symbols transformed, shifting and changing until they formed recognizable Cyrillic characters. Then English, then Mandarin, cycling through human languages at breathtaking speed. The message, when it stabilized, was simple and profound. The custodian WELCOMES, the heirs of the PREDCSSORS. "What does that mean?" Rivera asked, his weapon still ready despite the seemingly peaceful contact. Before anyone could speculate, the chamber shifted again. The walls became transparent, revealing the true scale of the vessel they had entered. It wasn't just a ship, it was a repository, a vast library of knowledge. Countless data storage units lined massive chambers that extended farther than they could see. "This isn't just a starship," Marcus whispered in awe. "It's an archive." New symbols appeared before them, then transformed into English. Voice recognition confirmed. Genetic profile matched. Access granted. The custodian awaits the HEIRS. Captain Kadri exchanged glances with her team. It recognized Lieutenant Novak's voice pattern and apparently our DNA. But why? Dmitri frowned. How could an alien vessel from 40,000 years ago recognize human speech or genetics? The answer materialized before them as a holographic figure took shape. Humanoid but clearly not human, with elongated limbs and features that seemed both familiar and alien. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through the air but directly in their minds. "Because you are not the first," it said, "and we have been waiting a very long time." The holographic figure stood before them, its form translucent yet somehow substantial. Captain Kadri stepped forward, years of diplomatic training guiding her response. "I am Captain Valeria Kadri of the interstellar survey ship Prometheus. We come in peace and friendship." The figure's expression remained impassive. "I am the custodian interface. I exist to preserve knowledge and prepare for the heir's return." Its gaze shifted to Dmitri. "Your vocal patterns activated dormancy protocols after 43,752 years. The cycle begins anew." Dr. Osai moved closer, his scientific curiosity overcoming caution. "What cycle? Who were the predecessors you mentioned?" The chamber transformed around them, the walls becoming a canvas for images that flowed like water. Cities that defied gravity, worlds terraformed and teeming with life. Vessels that dwarfed even this massive archive ship traveling between stars. "The predecessors arose 80,000 years before your earliest civilizations," the custodian explained. "They seeded life throughout this galaxy, nurturing worlds with potential. Earth was one such world." The images shifted to show beings similar to the hologram, working with genetic material, carefully modifying and cultivating life forms across diverse environments. "You're saying humans are engineered?" Wei asked, struggling with the implications. "Not engineered," the custodian corrected. "Cultivated. The predecessors found primitive hominids with potential. They accelerated certain traits: curiosity, adaptability, creativity. The rest of your evolution was natural as intended." Captain Kadri processed this revelation with remarkable composure. "Why? What was their purpose?" The custodian's form seemed to dim slightly. "Because they knew what was coming. They had seen it before." The visual display changed dramatically, showing a wave of darkness spreading across star systems. Worlds that had teemed with life were left barren, civilizations erased in moments. It was destruction on a scale beyond comprehension. "The convergence," the custodian named it. "A cosmic force that consumes all in its path. It comes in cycles, awakening when galactic civilizations reach certain technological thresholds. The predecessors faced it and prevailed, but at tremendous cost." Security Chief Rivera's hand tightened on his weapon. "And this convergence, is it coming back?" "It never left," the custodian replied simply. "It retreats, recovers, returns. The cycle is approximately 45,000 years. By our calculations, its awakening is imminent." The implications silenced the team. Humanity had only recently ventured beyond their solar system, establishing a handful of outposts. They were in no position to face a threat that had challenged a civilization capable of building the vessel they now stood in. If the predecessors were so advanced, why didn't they destroy this convergence permanently? Kadri asked. "The convergence cannot be destroyed by conventional means," the custodian answered. "It exists partially outside normal spacetime. The predecessors discovered only one effective strategy: unpredictability." The display shifted again, showing battles where smaller, more primitive vessels employed tactics that confused and disrupted the convergence's forces. The convergence operates through perfect prediction. It analyzes patterns, anticipates responses, counters with absolute efficiency. The predecessor's technology became predictable to it. "But humans," the custodian turned to face them directly, "humans are chaos embodied. Your decisions defy logical prediction. Your creativity generates solutions no algorithm can anticipate." Dmitri finally understood. "That's why my voice activated the ship. You were waiting for us specifically." "Yes," the custodian confirmed. "This vessel contains all the knowledge the predecessors preserved, their history, their technologies, their understanding of the convergence. It waited for the descendants of those they cultivated on Earth to reach the stars, to claim their inheritance before the next cycle begins." Dr. Osai's scientific mind raced with questions. But how could they know we would develop as they intended, that we would even survive long enough to reach space? They didn't, the custodian replied. You were one of many possibilities they seeded throughout the galaxy. Some failed. Others evolved differently than anticipated. You are the first to find us carrying the specific genetic and cognitive markers the predecessors enhanced. So what happens now? Kadri asked, the weight of command never feeling heavier than in this moment. The custodian gestured, and the chamber transformed once more, revealing a vast repository of technology. Weapons, defense systems, faster-than-light drives far beyond current human capabilities. Now you prepare. The knowledge contained in this vessel will advance your civilization by centuries, but time is short. The convergence stirs already at the edges of this galaxy. Within your lifetime, it will reach populated systems. Engineer Wei stared at the displayed technology with professional awe. We couldn't possibly understand all this in time, even with our best scientists. You will not be alone, the custodian interrupted. This vessel and others like it scattered throughout the galaxy contain interfaces designed to teach, to guide. I am programmed to assist the heirs in claiming their legacy. Captain Kadri took a deep breath, feeling the weight of a responsibility that extended far beyond her crew or even Earth. And if we refuse, if we're not ready for this knowledge or this fight? The custodian's expression remained unchanged. Then the cycle continues without you. The convergence consumes all in its path. Your worlds, your people, everything you have built will be erased, as countless civilizations before you have been erased. A heavy silence fell over the team as they contemplated the custodian's words. It was Security Chief Rivera who finally broke it. We need to report back to Earth Command. This is beyond our authority to decide. Kadri nodded in agreement, though her eyes never left the custodian. We'll return to our vessel and establish communication with our superiors. I trust that's acceptable. The choice must be yours, the custodian confirmed. But know this, the moment your presence activated this vessel, ripples spread across space-time. The convergence will have sensed it. The countdown has begun, regardless of your decision. As the team prepared to return to the Prometheus, Dmitri lingered, studying the holographic figure with intense curiosity. Why did the ship respond to my voice specifically? He asked. There are billions of humans. What made me different? The custodian turned to him, and for the first time, its expression softened slightly. Of all your crew, your genetic profile bears the closest resemblance to the predecessor who designed this vessel. In a sense, across 40,000 years, she recognized a distant sun. Back aboard the Prometheus, Captain Kadri faced the most challenging mission report of her career. How to explain to Earth Command that humanity was the inheritor of an ancient legacy, and simultaneously the front line in a cosmic war they never knew existed. The senior staff gathered in the conference room, still processing what they had learned. Dr. Ose had already begun analyzing the preliminary data the custodian had provided about predecessor technology. Engineer Wei was sketching designs inspired by the propulsion systems she'd glimpsed. Even the usually stoic Rivera seemed energized by the revelations. We should proceed with caution, Kadri advised. The custodian's claims are extraordinary. We need verification. The technology alone is proof, Wei argued. No human could have conceived of the principles I saw in that archive. It's centuries beyond our understanding. Which makes it dangerous, Rivera countered. If this convergence is real, then accepting this inheritance puts Earth directly in its path. Dmitri remained silent, still processing his unexpected connection to beings who had lived and died tens of thousands of years before his birth. The weight of the custodian's words pressed on him. She recognized a distant sun. We have no choice, he said finally, drawing everyone's attention. The custodian said the countdown has already begun. Whether we accept their knowledge or not, the convergence is coming. Better to face it prepared than ignorant. Captain Kadri studied the stars through the viewport, considering the responsibility that had fallen to her crew to humanity by pure chance. A routine patrol had transformed into humanity's greatest discovery and potentially its greatest challenge. Set course for Earth, she ordered, maximum speed, and prepare all records of our encounter for transmission. She paused, feeling the weight of history upon her shoulders. Everything changes now. As the Prometheus turned toward home, the ancient vessel pulsed once more with amber light. A beacon now awakened after millennia of waiting, signaling across the void to unseen watchers that the heirs had finally returned. Inheritors of the void. The United Earth Defense Council chamber buzzed with tension. 50 representatives from Earth's governing regions sat in tiered rows, their faces illuminated by the holographic display at the center of the room. The footage from the Prometheus played for the third time that day, showing the encounter with the vessel and the custodian's warnings about the approaching convergence. Admiral Zhao Lin, head of the Earth Defense Fleet, paused the playback. Captain Kadri, you understand what you're asking us to believe, that humanity was essentially gardened by an ancient alien race, and now we're being drafted into a cosmic war. Valeria Kadri stood straight-backed before the council, her uniform crisp despite the 3 weeks of debriefing since the Prometheus's return. I understand the implications, Admiral. I've had longer to process them than you have. The scientific evidence is compelling, Dr. Marcus Ose added from his position beside her. The technology aboard the vessel operates on principles we've barely theorized. The data cores we were permitted to bring back contain information that would have taken humanity centuries to discover independently. Director Eleanor Blackwood of Global Intelligence leaned forward. And we're supposed to trust this custodian without question. This could be an elaborate trap. To what end? Kadri countered. If the predecessors wanted to harm humanity, they could have done so millennia ago when we were still developing tools. Nevertheless, Council President Adebio said, we must proceed with caution. Dr. Osa, what progress has your team made with the repository's technology? Marcus activated his tablet, projecting a series of complex schematics. We've barely scratched the surface, but what we've decoded is revolutionary. Energy generation systems that make fusion look primitive, materials science that could transform our manufacturing capabilities, and defensive systems that could be weaponized, interrupted General Helena Santiago, if this technology spreads beyond Earth control. With respect, General, Kadri interjected, the custodian made it clear. The convergence is coming regardless of our actions. The question isn't whether we develop these technologies, but how quickly. The chamber fell silent as the council members contemplated the magnitude of the decision before them. Humanity stood at a crossroads: embrace an inheritance from beings they never knew existed, or face an existential threat unprepared. President Adebio sighed deeply. We will establish a special division to study and implement the repository's knowledge. Captain Kadri, you and your crew will lead this effort. The Prometheus will be recommissioned for further exploration of similar vessels the custodian indicated might exist. And Lieutenant Novak, Kadri asked, his unique genetic connection will be studied, of course, Adebio confirmed. But discreetly, the public announcement of our discovery must be carefully managed to prevent panic. Admiral Zhao nodded grimly. We have perhaps decades before this convergence arrives. We must use that time wisely. As the council continued debating implementation details, Kadri caught Marcus's eye. Both knew what the others didn't yet grasp. According to the custodian's timeline, humanity might have far less time than decades. Dmitry Novik stood by the window of his assigned quarters at the Geneva Research Complex, watching snow fall on the Alps. 3 months had passed since their return from the repository, and the world had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The official announcement had been carefully crafted. Humanity had discovered an ancient alien archive containing advanced scientific knowledge. No mention of the convergence or humanity's cultivated origins. Those truths remained classified at the highest levels. But the nightmares had started soon after their return. Visions of darkness consuming stars, civilizations vanishing in an eye blink, and whispers, constant whispers at the edge of his consciousness. A soft chime announced a visitor. Dr. Olivia Takahashi entered, her expression concerned as it often was during their sessions. "How are the headaches today?" she asked, activating her medical scanner. "Manageable," Dmitri replied. "The medication helps." Dr. Takahashi studied her readings. "Your brain activity patterns continue to evolve. The temporal lobe shows increased activity, particularly in the language centers." "I can understand languages I've never studied," Dmitri said quietly. "Yesterday, I responded to a researcher speaking Swahili without realizing it wasn't English." Takahashi made notes on her tablet. "And the dreams." Dmitri turned back to the window. "The same darkness, consumption, and something waiting." "The custodian indicated your genetic profile triggered the repository's awakening," Takahashi said. "We believe your exposure to its systems initiated changes in your neurological structure." "I'm becoming something else," Dmitri stated flatly. It wasn't a question. "You're still Dmitri Novik," she assured him. "But your brain is adapting to process information in new ways, almost like it was designed to," he finished. Before Takahashi could respond, his tablet chirped with a priority alert. Captain Kadri was requesting his presence in the main laboratory immediately. The laboratory occupied 3 underground levels of the complex. When Dmitri arrived, he found not only Captain Kadri and Dr. Osai, but also Admiral Zhao and a dozen top scientists from around the world. "Lieutenant," Kadri greeted him, her expression grave. "We have a situation." The main display showed a real-time feed from a deep space observatory. A region of space near the Uit cloud appeared distorted, as though reality itself was bending. "It started 16 hours ago," Marcus explained. "A spatial anomaly unlike anything we've recorded." Admiral Zhao turned to Dmitri. "Given your unique connection to the repository, we thought you might sense something." Dmitri approached the display, feeling oddly drawn to the swirling distortion. As he stared, the whispers in his mind intensified. Without conscious thought, his hand reached toward the image. "It's a tear," he said, his voice sounding distant even to his own ears. "A beginning." "A beginning of what?" Kadri asked. Dmitri turned, his eyes unfocused. "The harbingers come first. Scouts, they test defenses, catalog resistance. The convergence follows." The room fell silent. Dmitri blinked, suddenly aware of what he'd said. "I don't know where that came from." Dr. Osa stepped forward. "I think I do. The data cores we brought back contained historical records of previous convergence cycles. It appears Dmitri's altered neurology is accessing that information subconsciously." "You're saying he's remembering events he never experienced?" Admiral Zhao asked incredulously. "Not remembering," Marcus corrected. "Accessing, like retrieving files from a database." Captain Kadri studied Dmitri with concern. "What else do you know about these harbingers?" Dmitri closed his eyes, allowing the whispers to wash over him. "They're autonomous, designed to infiltrate and analyze. They appear as small vessels at first, but can combine into larger structures. They're drawn to advanced technology, particularly energy sources." Admiral Zhao glanced at the anomaly display. "How long do we have before these harbingers arrive?" "They're already here," Dmitri said, opening his eyes. "They crossed the threshold when the anomaly formed." As if confirming his words, the observatory feed showed multiple small objects emerging from the distortion, moving with purpose toward the inner solar system. "Alert all outposts," Admiral Zhao ordered his aide. "Full defensive protocols and accelerate Project Bulwark." Captain Kadri caught Dmitri's arm as the room erupted into activity. "There's something else, something you're not saying." Dmitri met her gaze, his expression troubled. "The harbingers aren't just scouts, Captain. They're catalysts. Their presence accelerates the convergence's arrival." "How much time does that leave us?" "Years, not decades. 5, perhaps less." Kadri's face hardened with resolve. "Then we adapt, we prepare, we survive." She turned to address the room. "Dr. Osa, I need you to analyze those objects' trajectory. Admiral, we need to mobilize the Prometheus for an intercept mission." "Intercept?" Zhao questioned. We barely understand what we're facing. Which is precisely why we need to get closer, Kadri argued. The repository's knowledge is our best weapon, but it's incomplete. We need to study these harbingers firsthand. 2 weeks later, the Prometheus approached the coordinates where the Harbinger vessels had been tracked. The ship had been hastily retrofitted with prototype technologies derived from the repository, enhanced sensors, improved propulsion, and experimental defensive systems. Captain Kadri stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display. Her crew had been supplemented with specialists from Earth's defense forces, but the core team remained the same. Some bonds could not be replicated, especially ones forged in the face of cosmic revelations. "Anything, Lieutenant Wei?" she asked. Engineer Jin Wei, now heading the tactical systems, shook her head. "Nothing on standard scans, Captain." "Try the quantal detection array," Dr. Osai suggested. The new system, based on repository schematics, could theoretically detect objects partially phased out of normal spacetime. Wei activated the array. The display immediately lit up with signatures, dozens of small objects surrounding the Prometheus in a spherical formation. "They've been watching us," Security Chief Rivera commented grimly, his hand moving to his sidearm by reflex. "More likely studying us," Marcus corrected. "Remember, they're designed to gather intelligence." Dmitri sat at the communications station, his expression distant. Since leaving Earth, the whispers had grown stronger. Sometimes they formed coherent patterns, almost like conversations in a language he almost understood. "They're curious," he said suddenly. "They've never encountered humans before." Captain Kadri turned to him. "Can you communicate with them?" Dmitri hesitated. "Not directly, but I can sense their purpose." "Which is?" "Evaluation, classification." He paused, then added more ominously, "calculation of threat level." Marcus studied his sensor readings. "Their composition is unlike anything in our database. They appear to be constructed from a material that can shift its atomic structure at will." "Adaptive technology," Wei murmured appreciatively despite herself. "Perfect for exploration and infiltration." "Captain," Rivera interrupted, "one of them is approaching." The tactical display showed a single Harbinger vessel breaking formation, moving directly toward the Prometheus. It was small, perhaps 3 meters in diameter, with a shifting, metallic surface that reflected light in peculiar ways. "Hold position," Kadri ordered. "No aggressive actions." The Harbinger stopped 50 meters from the ship. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a beam of energy lanced out, not striking the Prometheus but scanning it from bow to stern. "Shields holding," Wei reported. "It's not an attack, more like an intensive scan." The beam retracted. The Harbinger remained motionless for several seconds, then began to change shape, its surface flowing like liquid metal until it formed a rough approximation of the Prometheus. "It's mimicking us," Marcus observed, fascination overriding caution. The miniature Prometheus replica held its form briefly, then dissolved back into its original configuration. The Harbinger retreated to rejoin its companions. "What just happened?" Rivera demanded. Dimitri's hands moved across his console without conscious direction. "They're transmitting data, sending what they learned about us." "To whom?" Kadri asked. "The main body, the collective." Dmitri looked up, his eyes reflecting knowledge that wasn't his own. "The convergence." In the weeks that followed, humanity accelerated its preparations. The encounter with the Harbingers confirmed the custodian's warnings. An ancient enemy was awakening, and Earth stood directly in its path. The Geneva complex expanded rapidly, becoming the hub of a global initiative code-named Inheritor Protocol. Nations pooled resources and set aside centuries-old rivalries in the face of extinction. New facilities emerged across the planet, dedicated to developing applications of the repository's knowledge. Dmitri Novik found himself at the center of these efforts, his unique connection to the predecessor technology making him an invaluable asset. His mind continued to change, integrating knowledge he had never learned understanding concepts that shouldn't have been comprehensible to a human brain. Dr. Takahashi monitored these changes with growing concern. "Your neural pathways are reconfiguring at an accelerating rate," she explained during one examination. "Almost as if your brain is optimizing itself to process the repository information." "The predecessors planned this," Dmitri replied calmly. "They cultivated specific genetic traits in early humans, traits that would remain dormant until triggered by exposure to their technology." "You're not bothered by this?" she asked. Dmitri considered the question. "I should be, but I understand the necessity. The convergence adapts to patterns it recognizes. Humanity needs to evolve in ways it cannot predict." In the adjacent laboratory, Captain Kadri met with Dr. Ose and Engineer Wei to review progress on the defensive systems being developed from repository specifications. "The phase shift generators are operational," Wei reported, displaying schematics of devices being installed at strategic locations throughout the solar system. "When activated, they create localized distortions that should disrupt the Harbinger's ability to analyze our defenses accurately." "And the Artemis Protocol?" Kadri asked. Marcus brought up a new display showing 5 specially modified vessels under construction in Earth orbit. "The scout ships will be ready within 6 months. Based on the coordinates provided by the repository, we've identified the locations of 3 additional archive vessels within 20 light years." "We need those archives," Kadri said firmly. "Each one contains different aspects of predecessor knowledge. The custodian indicated our vessel focused primarily on historical records and basic technologies. The others may contain more advanced defensive systems," Wei agreed, "or weapons specifically designed to combat the convergence." Their meeting was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Admiral Zhao. "Captain, we're detecting multiple spatial anomalies forming throughout the system, similar to the first, but larger. Defense outposts on Titan and Europa are reporting visual contact with Harbinger vessels. But these are different, larger, more complex." "The second wave," Kadri realized. "Dmitri predicted this. After the scouts come the vanguard." Wei pulled up the defense grid display, showing red indicators spreading across the solar system. "They're everywhere, moving faster than we anticipated." "How long until the Artemis vessels are operational?" Kadri demanded. 4 months at the earliest," Marcus replied. "We can't accelerate further without compromising safety." Kadri made a quick decision. "The Prometheus can reach the nearest repository coordinates in 3 weeks at maximum speed. We'll take what we've learned, activate the next archive, and bring back whatever knowledge it contains." "The Council won't approve sending our most advanced ship away from Earth during an incursion," Wei cautioned. "Then we don't ask," Kadri replied grimly. "Humanity's survival outweighs protocol. Prepare the ship for immediate departure." Dmitri stood in the Prometheus's observation lounge, watching Earth recede as the ship accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Captain Kadri had assembled a skeleton crew for this unauthorized mission, only those absolutely necessary and completely trusted. "Having second thoughts?" Kadri asked, joining him at the viewport. "No," Dmitri replied. "This is where I need to be." He turned to face her. "But there's something I haven't told you, something I've begun to understand." Kadri waited silently, her expression open but guarded. "The predecessors didn't just disappear after seeding human potential," Dmitri continued. "They transformed themselves, evolved beyond physical form." "Into what?" "Into something the convergence couldn't predict or perceive. They exist now in a state between dimensions, watching, waiting." Kadri processed this revelation. "Are you saying they could help us?" "Not directly. The rules of their existence prevent direct intervention, but they left the repositories as tools for us to find, to use." Dmitri's gaze returned to the stars. "We're part of their legacy, perhaps their greatest experiment. Can a younger race succeed where they could not?" The Prometheus passed Neptune's orbit, pushing its experimental engines to speeds no human vessel had achieved before. Ahead lay unknown stars and the promise of knowledge that might save their species. On the bridge, Dr. Osai monitored long-range sensors. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity in the Kuiper belt, multiple Harbinger vessels converging." "They're tracking us," Rivera concluded from his security station. "They know what we're trying to do." Captain Kadri took her command chair, determination etched on her features. "They may suspect, but they can't know our destination. Engineer Wei, push the engines to maximum. Dr. Osai, activate the phase shift generators." The Prometheus surged forward as its experimental systems engaged, creating a localized distortion in spacetime that made the ship difficult to track or predict. "We need to reach the next repository before they can intercept us," Kadri said. "Everything depends on it." Dmitri took his place at the communications console, feeling the whispers in his mind grow stronger as they pushed deeper into space. The voices of the past and the threats of the present converged in his consciousness, painting a vision of a future balanced on a knife's edge. Humanity had spent its existence looking to the stars, never suspecting that its very nature had been shaped by beings who had walked among those stars eons before. Now, as inheritors of an ancient legacy and defenders against a cosmic nightmare, they faced their greatest test. The Harbinger vessels pursued, growing in number as they crossed the boundary of the solar system. The convergence was awakening fully now, its attention fixed on the descendants of those who had once defied it.